Greetings everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We're back again with more Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. This time, wanted to go through the Lich ending slides that are not related to Ascension. So of course in the Lich playthrough that I did on the channel, we got a full Ascension ending with all 6 crystals. This is not that one. This is the one, if you just go through it the regular way, that most people would have access to. And with that, let's go ahead and move forward. Life and death, destiny and great deeds, answers to mysteries, the search for one's true path. The mind can comprehend all of these, and then such concepts can be written down as a sequence of formulas, a series of lines, a chain of thought. Still, a moment always comes when it is time to wrap up, to reach a conclusion, to put a period at the end of the last sentence. The impossible rift, the bleeding wound that had tormented all of Golarion for 100 years, was finally healed. By sacrificing his soul, which he had placed in his phylactery, the commander severed the last ties that bound him to his mortal past. The goddess Urgathoa looked upon all this favorably and filled the void left by the forfeited soul with her dark wisdom. And in that darkness, the commander saw what the Pallid Princess had planned for him, to become the leader that would march the undead legions to storm Pharasma's realm. The time of the inevitable rebellion was rapidly approaching. The 5th Crusade may not have lasted long, but in the short time, Dresden became the commander's city, his bulwark, his citadel. Unsurprisingly, he remained the ruler of the city and the surrounding lands after the spectacular victory at Threshold. The former lands of the Worldwound became a realm of death. The dark towers of Dresden enticed many who yearned for a taste of forbidden knowledge. Undead legions safeguarded the necromancers who spat on Pharasma's taboo as they delved into the mysteries of death. Each of them sought to follow in the commander's footsteps, to throw off the chains of mortality and find eternal undeath. The memory of Baphomet and his deeds faded, and the shadow of a new, far more terrifying evil fell upon Avestan. When the commander butchered the defiant crusaders in Dresden, it did not go unnoticed. The Knights of Azim called upon every Golarion nation to join them in a shining crusade against the new threat. But few rulers answered the summons. Memories of that horrific massacre were still too fresh in their minds. The short-tempered Lich Zacharius did not depart Dresden as he had intended. His respect for the commander compelled him to change his plans, and the Crusade leader's former mentor took on the task of instructing the novices who were flocking to the fortress. His training produced a great many talented mages, almost as many as he killed for insufficient diligence in their studies. As the leader of the Crusaders, the commander won their loyalty and obedience. Even in the Crusade's darkest hours, the commander found ways to restore the army's supply lines. His military acumen was beyond question. Under his leadership, the divided, poorly trained Crusader forces were reforged into an invincible army. With the war concluded, most of its defenders hastily left Dresden. The memory of the terrible sacrifices made in the battle for the city was too hard to bear. Within a century, Dresden had become a dilapidated, insignificant backwater. After the Battle of Threshold, Queen Galfrey vanished. Some claimed that they had seen her in the waste around Iz, while others told stories about her being held against her will in the dungeons of Dresden. The ward stones from the chain that once guarded the borders of Mendev were carefully disassembled, one by one. The angels that had been trapped inside returned to heaven to heal their wounded spirits and prepare for new battles against evil. The victory over the Worldwound changed many things, not just on Golarion, but in the Midnight Isles as well. Nocticula spent many days pondering the words of a certain young and fearless prophet. Before long, the Lady in Shadow openly renounced her realm and named herself the Redeemer Queen. This revolt against her own demonic nature transformed Nocticula, severed her ties to the Abyss, and brought her to Elysium. There, upon creating a realm named Midnight's Palette, the Redeemer Queen attained divine power and became the patroness of exiles. The now vacant throne was instantly seized by Shamira the Ardent Dream. However, her power could not compare to the might of the Lady in Shadow. The Midnight Isles, which had become a tempting prize for many demons, were plunged into chaos. The Demon Lord Baphomet suffered a defeat. The Worldwound was closed and the convenient passage to Golarion was sealed along with it. Baphomet shifted his attention to the realms of the other Demon Lords. A cell of the Templars of the Ivory Labyrinth was soon discovered in Alushanira. The Demon Lord Deskari suffered a defeat. He bided his time, continuing to plot his invasion of Golarion and after that, of heaven itself. The cultists that remained on Golarion went mad one after another, tortured by the nightmarish dreams their lord sent to them. Having rediscovered his own story, the storyteller rejected the goddess's proposal. He was celebrated as a great historian and rightfully held the position of Dean of the History faculty at the Arcanumerium, the most renowned academy in Absalom. After 40 years passed before his age caught up with him, and it was his turn to appear before the Lady of Graves. Once the war had ended, Camellia grew bored and irritable. Shortly afterward, on a moonless night, she vanished. About a month later, an assassin by the name of Maria arrived in Varissia. She had few things in common with the missing woman, apart from a fondness for cutting the hearts out of her victims. After Horgus's death, an unknown half-elf woman laid claim to his fortune. She introduced herself as Horgus's daughter and presented his will as proof. However, having received the fortune, the young woman transferred it to Mendev's treasury under a single condition. She insisted that the name of the Gwyrm family should be forever remembered in Mendev's chronicles as one of the state's greatest benefactors. Having properly fulfilled his duty to the mongrels and, to his surprise, avoided death, Lan was suddenly faced with a choice: what to do with his life now that it wasn't going to end anytime soon. His hesitation did not last long, and just a few months later, he went on a sea voyage to see the world he had saved. After the war, the Huntress left the commander's service and, having cobbled together a band of ruthless mercenaries out of veteran crusaders, went to the River Kingdoms to conquer one of them for herself. For a handful of years, she ruled over a dozen villages until the local lords joined forces to put an end to her reign. After the victory, Ember simply sat for a long time, staring at the tongues of flames dancing in her hands. Her new powers frightened her. The awe-struck redeemed were ready to hang on her every word, and that frightened her even more. She left without saying goodbye to anyone and continued her endless wayfaring along the roads of Golarion, helping the distressed and punishing evildoers. Many worshipped her as a saint, but she would always respond with, "Please, I'm just an ordinary girl." Soon after the war, the tireless researcher of all things researchable embarked on a new journey. She had a sudden urge to know how much time it would take to visit every nation on Golarion. She returned after a year and a half with a pile of notes, which she promptly handed over to her assistant. After all, someone had to help her compile the entries for the first volume of the Encyclopedia Golarion. It only made sense for her assistant to help, given that one of the entries was dedicated to him, the commander of the Fifth Crusade, who had made Golarion history. Darren Arende embraced his new life, one that was free of the other. He became more mature, his smile grew colder, and his choice of diversions more elaborate, and he acquired an imperious streak. Inquisitor Leotor's blood seems to have left darkness into Darren's soul, or had it always dwelt there? Whatever the case, in that darkness, he was free and happy as never before. He never lost his respect, or should that be his fondness, for the commander and would often visit him in Dresden. To his own surprise, Woljejepto became a war hero. Esteem and fame were shortly followed by great wealth. The tiefling did not let his newfound fortune turn his head, but chose to invest the money in several profitable ventures and one charity for street urchins. Within a few years, his signature style came to include a top hat, a cane, and a bit of a belly. There was a lot of talk in the taverns of Absalom about the time soon after the end of the war when Woljef appeared in the city in the company of Count Darren Arende. It remains unclear whether Darren treated the tiefling as a wayward younger brother or a court jester, but he took pleasure in showing him the world. The third person in the group was rumored to be the commander himself. Regil de Renge wrote a treatise on waging war against the demons, both a practical manual and a philosophical exhortation, and once that was done, he succumbed to the bleaching completely. He was posthumously reinstated in his order and buried with honors in the officers' cemetery. His treatise was used in all future wars against the abyss by mortals, angels, and devils alike. Before he died, he managed to send a letter to the commander. Did it contain sincere farewells or a list of directives? Impossible to say. No one was privy to the contents except the recipient. The war changed Grey Boar. He left the assassin's craft behind and embarked on a search for his family. It took years to win their love again, but he had never been one to back down from a fight, and so he won that battle as well. Grey Boar hung his axes above the fireplace and became an upstanding citizen. The transformation was difficult for him, and many a time he would reminisce about the days of his daring youth. Still, there was one joy in family life that the dwarf would not have traded for anything in the world: his daughter, Mora. She grew up to be an exceptional warrior, and watching her train brought Grey Boar true happiness. Arushale had changed her nature, completely ridding herself of evil, but she would not dare to live among mortals. She took up residence in a small house away from their settlements. Shortly afterward, rumors began to spread. Some said there was a kind sorceress living in the cottage, or perhaps a reclusive saint, and people would come to her asking for help. She never refused anyone, and in time, she earned their trust and friendship.
And what of me, the writer of these words? The half-demon witch known as the architect of the Worldwound. I was defeated. The victor spared my life in a gesture that was not quite a boon, not quite charity. I was left without hope, without a chance of finding a purpose again. I lived out my remaining days in an isolated cottage, far from everyone, needed by none, discovered by none. I have recounted the story of my life for you, Pharasma, Lady of Graves. Not only of my life, but of the commander's also. I believe the tale of such an illustrious figure would pique even a goddess's curiosity. Now you know everything. I await your verdict, goddess.
Silence hangs over the boneyard. The Lady of Graves is weighing her decision, and it seems the entire universe is holding its breath, awaiting her pronouncement. Who would dare to break a silence so absolute? Intervene. Your awareness touches the boneyard, but it collides with an insuperable obstacle: the will of the Lady of Graves.
Urgathoa's servants are not welcome in my halls. Begone, and never dare appear here again. As for you, Areelu Vorlesh, you wrought great evil, while it stemmed from the evil that was done to you. Your actions far exceeded it. Your soul is dark, and there is only one place for you in the universe. I shall send you to the abyss, plane of pain and fury, suffering and privation. That which you have done to others will now be done to you. So be it.
Okay, and those are the regular Lich ending slides. I actually really like that sequence with Pharasma, so this was definitely worth going through. I hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like down below, share this content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.